Welcome everyone to another episode of the Real Estate Show. Today we have a treat for you. One of our favorite people, Sean Lakin, our service and fixed ops manager here at Beaver Coach Sale, joins us for a conversation into the RV world.
We are super excited to bring this one to you. This guy knows so much, it's ridiculous. We barely even scratched the surface, and it's just fun talking to him. I mean, he's one of our best friends and work with him every day, but we could have just hours upon hours upon hours of podcasts with this guy because he knows so much specific information that you can only get with almost 30 years in the business. So it was a ton of fun to do. We talked about a lot, and we're excited to bring it to you.
Yeah, you think we're joking when we say he's probably forgotten more about RVs than we'll ever know. Just in a short conversation with him, you can tell he knows a lot.
That's right.
So with that said, and without further ado, enjoy our conversation with Sean Lakin.
When the customer goes to purchase the coach, we know to a pretty high degree of certainty that the unit's been checked out properly. Then it goes out onto the lot. And even if that coach sells the next day, it's still gonna have somebody go back through it and check everything and make sure it's working before it ends up to the customer. Every coach that we deliver comes into the delivery bay. It's got a cool little velvet rope and all these little brass poles and the red carpet and the whole 9 yards. And we deliver every coach, no matter if it's a brand new, $500,000 unit down to a $20,000 trade-in towable or whatever the case may be. Everybody gets the same treatment. We have balloons or name on a little placard on the coach. We get a picture, send them a calendar, that kind of thing. So it's very much about the experience for the customer, and I think that we do that to a higher degree than anybody I've ever seen.
Welcome to the Real Estate Show, brought to you by the top 50 dealer Beaver Coach Sales with your hosts Ryan Kelly
and Eric Shaver. If you're here to learn about all things RV, you're in the right place. In this podcast, we sit down with people who build, buy, and sell RVs to bring you an in-depth look at the RV lifestyle.
Welcome everyone to the Real Estate Show. We have a treat today as we get to sit down and have a conversation with one of my favorite human beings on earth, Sean Lakin. He is our service manager and fixed operations manager here at Beaver Coach Sales. He's probably forgotten more about RVs than Eric and I will ever know. So really setting you up here for the expectations, Sean. So we're gonna pick his brain today about his experience in the RV industry, about what's going on and what he's learned over the years. So Sean, thank you for joining the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Let's start off with a brief history. Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get into the RV industry?
In 1993, I took a summer job with, at that time it was Beaver Coach in their warranty center. And I was washing motorhomes, cleaning the shop, sweeping the floors, and just doing general maintenance type stuff. And then I was going to college at COCC for automotive technology, and we were really busy, and the boss was looking for some people to help out, and found out that I was going to college for automotive technology, and said, "Oh, you want to turn wrenches for a living?" And I said, "Yeah, it sounds like fun." And so he immediately put me to work. So I was still taking care of my other duties and doing some light mechanic work, and did that for quite a while. One of the other lead mechanics, his name was Arnie Meyer. He worked here for a really long time. Kind of took me under his wing. We worked as a team for quite a few years. He moved to Alaska, and then I was our lead heavy chassis mechanic for quite a long time. Our business actually had changed hands a few times. It went from Host to Monaco to Beaver Coach Sales, and then Beaver Coach Sales again. I was a shop foreman for quite a while. Took on a lot of the larger shop projects. We did a lot of sidewall reskins, 130 some odd coaches that we reskinned for Monaco Corporation because of delamination issues, and just because of my kind of methodical and tedious nature, it kind of fell into my lap to create a process, run the crew, so we had a certain degree of consistency of the end product. And it worked out really well, kept me very, very busy. I've never worked so much overtime in my whole life as that 4 or 5 years. And then worked as the shop foreman for Beaver Coach Sales prior to the bankruptcy that we then purchased them out of for quite a while. And then I was the shop foreman for us for the first year, and then service manager for a year, and then operations manager for the next 6 years. So that kind of brings us to where we are now. And I really enjoy the challenge. I think that what keeps me going is just being able to help people out. I think that that's a huge component of my kind of daily function, is just I touch a lot of people's lives that, or they're in dire straits, broke down on the side of the road, or they don't have water, they don't have heat, something in their coach isn't working that's, critical to their comfort. And so I get to help them out. And then also, mentoring some of the guys in the shop, and, making sure our day-to-day operations on the ground are going smoothly. The body shop has been really cool, and it's been a really big challenge. I was never really involved with the body shop beyond just some basic, prep things. When I was really early on in my career, they had me doing some of that stuff just as kind of a side gig, helping them out. But to see like how the industry works, and how the painters back in the paint shop, how they do their, because we take on some incredible wreck jobs where there's pieces of front caps that are, the size of garbage cans missing, and we have to rebuild them, and we've got some very specialized equipment that helps out, but it's just all knowledge on their part. And they have a very high standard of quality just from their many years in the warranty background from Monaco and Beaver. Some of those guys have worked fiberglass for 30 plus years, so that's really cool. And we have a lot of talented people. Some of our technicians, our average tenure is about 15 years. We don't have a lot of turnover. It's just a fun job all the way around. It's very challenging, but I enjoy the challenge.
Yeah. Now you've been coming here since '93. Did you work at the plant, or did you always work at this facility?
I never worked at the production facility. I always worked in service and warranty. I did go down to the plant occasionally to do troubleshooting and stuff on the line. If they had a big issue that they were having a hard time resolving, we'd get with their engineering department and get some of their lead techs and troubleshooters together and put all our heads together and figure it out. If we had repetitive warranty issues that were showing up in the service center, there was a process to identify those, not just to identify the issue, but actually come up with a resolution and then put it into production. And so we were a big part of that as well. So once again, it's like super challenging. It's a very fun job, very diverse. Every day is different. One day you could be, doing brakes, and the next day you could be doing plumbing, and the next day you could be, replacing a roof cap or back cap or windshield or whatever the case may be.
So in total, how many different businesses under this same roof have been a part of the store?
So it was original Beaver, and then it was either Host or Safari, and then Monaco, and then Beaver Coach Sales 1, and then Beaver Coach Sales 2. So yeah, at least 5 that I can remember. So
what are some differences or changes or evolutions that took place from business to business?
Well, from a production standpoint versus what we do now, being warranty center and customer pay, when we were typically just doing warranty work for the manufacturer, we weren't doing a lot of outside customer sales. We weren't doing a whole lot of maintenance and like routine maintenance work, oil changes, transmission services, stuff like that. And then when it went to Host RV, when Beaver went through bankruptcy, and it was Host RV, that was more of, we still did warranty work. We were doing a lot more customer pay work. Our body shop really started to grow. So yeah, that was the difference between, working for a corporation as kind of a division versus being in an independently run shop. We were trying to take in far more customer labor than we were, under warranty. They kind of shied away from it. They didn't want to do that kind of stuff. So that was a huge change. And then just philosophy of management. It was a lot smaller, tighter knit. You knew who everybody was. So that's nice too. And then when Monaco, Monaco's an enormous corporation, so we had certain individuals that we dealt with, and we knew who they were, and they were in and out of the shop. But for the most part, like, it's so enormous, we didn't know everybody's name. There was new faces coming in and out all the time. But yeah, so from Beaver Coach Sales, the first until the present, Same story. It was a more of a family atmosphere. Everybody knows everybody. You know, it was really fun. Growing up in that environment was really fun. A lot of great people in the sales department, a lot of great people in the service department. Our turnover has always been pretty low, so you got to see, you know, people stuck around, and you really got to enjoy each other, make some lasting friendships. And same with the customers. You know, you get to know them and you get to like them and you develop friendships, and then they just stop coming around, either because they're no longer able physically to operate the motorhome, or they're just no longer with us. And so there's definitely some sadness there, but yeah, it's all in all, I think it's been a really good environment, and if it wasn't, I wouldn't be here. I'd be doing something else. So.
Yeah.
Well, so business has changed quite a bit. How you mentioned at the beginning you started, you know, with a bag of tools, just attacking the coaches, to developing process and procedures, to being a foreman, to now fixed op manager, overseeing parts and a whole service department. What is kind of your growth been through that process?
Well, I think, you know, and maybe it's not unique in the industry, but definitely unique to my experience, is that to be able to come up from a guy that was washing the motorhomes and changing oil and sweeping the floors and running parts, and I worked in the parts room for a while when I was needed, and it's just being able to see the business from so many different angles and understand like the idiosyncrasies of each department. It's kind of a curse and a blessing, because in one respect, it's like you've been there, done that, you know how it should be done. So you kind of almost, I don't know what the word you would use is, but you kind of approach things from a more skeptical nature, because like I already know that how to do that, how to, you know, resolve that issue, or where to find that part and whatnot. So it's hard to not jump in and you know, kind of take the wheel and point somebody in the direction you already know that you should head, and instead of letting them learn, you know, from their own experience. You want to help them, but in a way you're kind of almost hindering their growth, because you're not giving them the opportunity to fail. You know, I think it's just like, it's almost like having a kid. You know, we got a lot of kids at home, and I always, you know, want to guide them in the right direction. Don't make the mistakes I made. But I think in a lot of cases, you know, you almost have to let people make those mistakes, because that's part of the growing process. So something that I have to work on as a manager is just to kind of stand back and delegate and let those people, you know, do the things that they're capable of doing, and let them make their own mistakes. But yeah, to come from sweeping the floor to building a budget for a, you know, multi-million-dollar company, and minding our expenses and creating pay plans, and, you know, pulling some strings with the HR department and things of that nature. We kind of have our hands in everything. A lot of the managers here at Beaver Coach Sales wear a lot of hats. Christina, you know, she handles rental and HR and helps with finance and helps the salesman. And, you know, it's an intense environment in the summertime, but it's a great and challenging place to work. You get meet a lot of great people and work with a lot of great people. And I appreciate the opportunity and the challenge.
That's awesome. You've worn a lot of hats in the industry over the years. I mean, I'm doing from parts to like you said, I mean, to detail all the way up to full management and everything. It's pretty cool. I know Ryan and I sure appreciate it, because whenever we have a dumb question, is our short time in the business, you're always the one that can pretty much answer it, which is awesome. And the same with our customers. And I feel like probably a lot of our customers know that you're that wealth of information that is really valuable. And that's, I'm sure it's hard to delegate when you're the guy that knows every individual in and out. So with that, I have a question for you. So to kind of tell our audience, if you'd outline everything that we can cover, because like you mentioned earlier, we can do plumbing, which is cool. We have one in the automotive industry, you're working on radio, or you're working on brakes, or you're working on a water pump. In this, we do everything you have in a home on wheels. So if you could outline kind of what we do, what we're capable of, I think that'd be pretty valuable to hear from you.
I think it would be easier to list the things that we don't do here.
Probably.
Because really what we don't do here is, you know, there are some chassis issues that we will send to the chassis manufacturers, warranty authorized center, like Freightliner, Spartan, stuff like that. The stuff we can do in-house, we do. The stuff that's either, you know, it's too big or we just can't do it in a timely manner, we'll send to them. Windshields we don't do, and that's not because we're not capable of doing windshields. There are guys in here that are, but what we found is that windshields, especially one piece, very heavy, very awkward. The guys that do them for long periods of time inevitably hurt themselves. They either hurt themselves on a short-term basis, or they create some kind of a condition. Like there's a couple different disorders that you can develop by using some of the air tools that you use to cut the urethane out of the windshields and whatnot, like carpal tunnel and Raynaud's disease and stuff like that. So we just don't do them. And it's not that we don't do them because we can't do them, and we will if we have to. But I care about our people, and I don't want to put them in a situation where they're going to hurt themselves or develop some kind of a condition that would preclude them from working or, living a happy life. So we just don't do that stuff. But pretty much, I mean, that's
pretty much everything
really
else on a coach, he can do it. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And, I know that you're on the phone a lot with other service centers from across the country that you develop friendships with, and they're picking your brain on certain things and asking for your advice and help on stuff. What is some common challenges in service centers across the country? And kind of a second part is, what is the relationship between sales staff and service staff in most dealerships?
I would say, in my experience, the relationship between the sales staff and the service staff is mostly negative. It's very competitive. I think that in a lot of facilities, and in my experience, the service staff are kind of seen as a necessary evil. They're a mechanism to facilitate the delivery of a coach, and that's pretty much it. And I believe that is that way by creation. It's intentional. The dealerships don't really plan on having a lot of back-end service, and so they don't look at it that way. In our dealership, the service center is integral to bringing customers into the business that maybe didn't purchase from us. We get them in the door. We show them that we're a capable facility that cares about their people. We care about what they do, care about our customers. Customer retention is very high. We don't lose many people, and usually when we do, it's because they moved out of the area, and it's just simply, it's too inconvenient for them to travel that distance. But then we have a lot of people that travel a very great distance to be here. Our sales management team, I don't think that I've ever gotten along or seen the guys get along better with the sales team, with the management team. There's a lot of mutual respect. There's a ton of experience. I appreciate it because we haven't really had that in the past. So it's really nice. It makes for a much more stress-free environment. Easier communication. You don't have to hold anything back. If you really have a problem, you just say it, and you sit down together and put your heads together and figure it out. So yeah, it's a healthy environment. It's that way not just between sales and service, but service and rental, sales and rentals, marketing, and all the other departments, accounting. I mean, it's a philosophy, I think, that is a top down in our company that starts with ownership and just trickles down to everybody's got their place. The guy that dumps the garbage can, it's to the guy that signs the checks.
And everyone's equally as part of the team.
Absolutely.
Treated the same.
100%.
So
team effort.
what's that ratio between service-generated service, from outside people coming in, and sales-generated service? We sell an RV on the front line, maybe a new one or a used one, and it goes back and gets service work done, essentially prep for delivery. What's the mix at our store, and what's the mix at most dealerships in your experience?
At our store, we survey our customers, and one of the questions is did you purchase your unit from Beaver Coach Sales and Service? Anywhere between, depending on the surveys that we've done, anywhere between 60 to 65% of the people that bring their coach in have not purchased here.
Wow, that's a big mix.
Have purchased here.
Okay,
40% of them are from other dealers. They purchase from either a private party or somebody else. And so to us, that's a
Still
huge
a big
number
percentage.
to have that many people that have heard about us, usually through word of mouth, because we're not in a location where people just trip over us. We're not on a major, freeway. We're not in a major city. It's so you don't find it by accident. Most of the time they've heard from somebody that we have a great service department or that we have a great sales department, and we're carrying a lot of the big diesel pusher brands. I think that we're one of a handful that has, Thor and Integra and Tiffin and Newmar. So yeah, that's huge for us, and I anticipate that's gonna just continue to grow. We're starting to do some towables, we're doing some fifth wheels. So yeah, it's a great direction for the business to go. The diesel pusher market is awesome, but it's a very narrow piece of the overall pie, and so it's great to get some new blood into the RV industry, be able to bring people in at the towable level, get them into a fifth wheel or a Class C, and then get them into a Class A, and then eventually get them into something like we're sitting in now. Yeah. So it's a logical progression. And not only that, but for the tech staff too, and and the sales staff, it's I've always said that it's hard to find good people. Well, it's even harder to find people that we consider good enough to jump right out of another industry or a green recruit that has no real experience and put them into something like this. It's very intimidating. And so we've never had kind of the progression from a technician where he's working on, a towable, and then he's working on a fifth wheel, and then he's working on a Class C, and then he's working on, something else, a toy hauler or whatever the case may be, and then up into, a big Class A diesel pusher. So yeah, I think it's going to be real healthy for our people and for our business.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that we talked about a little bit briefly. So like as a sales department for us, we sell the coaches and you guys help us get them prepped and deliver them. And so really we lean as a sales department on the service department a lot. Like you mentioned, a lot of dealers, that's all their service department does is just deliver coaches. So what do we do differently that when we deliver a coach as opposed to another dealer that might not dig as deep as our guys that have 15, 20 years of experience? What makes our PDI process look a little different than the other?
Well, you're going to see from the time it lands on our lot, it's going to get pretty much 2 complete inspections. The first inspection is going to be basically the dealer acceptance portion, and that's a unit that lands from a manufacturer. Usually the lot technician will go out and go through the coach and note any defects that are obvious. They'll note any of the items that should be in the coach if they're missing or not, and if there's something hanging down or a chip in the windshield, they'll get all that stuff on record. Then it goes into the service center, and typically that process happens within the first couple days, depending on the volume of work that we've got back in service. And then it goes through a 10 to 12 hour, sometimes more, inspection where literally every component in the coach is exercised, whether it be the air conditioner or whether it be a TVs, sound bars. These motorhomes have become so complex that there's a lot of idiosyncrasies. We have people in the service center that specialize in certain areas. We have 2 guys that most of their job is just doing audio-visual stuff. So making sure all the TVs are working properly, satellite dishes working properly, Wi-Fi boosters, antennas, all that stuff, that everything's operable. Then we take them out for an extensive test drive. And then once we've formulated that list of repair issues, we send it off to the manufacturer. And typically within a day or 2, we get back authorization and the technicians order all their parts and they go through and they start fixing everything. And that way, when the customer goes to purchase the coach, we know to a pretty high degree of certainty that the unit's been checked out properly. Mm-hmm. Then it goes out onto the lot. And even if that coach sells the next day, it's still going to have somebody go back through it and check everything and make sure it's working before it ends up to the customer. Every coach that we deliver comes into the delivery bay. It's got a cool little velvet rope and all these little brass poles and the red carpet and the whole 9 yards. And we deliver every coach, no matter if it's a brand new, $500,000 unit down to a $20,000 trade-in towable or whatever the case may be. Everybody gets the same treatment. We have balloons or name on a little placard on the coach. We get a picture, send them a calendar, that kind of thing. So it's very much about the experience for the customer. And I think that we do that to a higher degree than anybody I've ever seen. I see a lot of people delivering coaches out in dirt parking lots, and it's basically a handshake, hand them the keys, and away they go. And and there's not a lot of back-end support because that's not really the function of their service center, is to fix things after the fact. Mm-hmm. We want to fix everything before the fact. And I'm not to say that you're not going to have problems going down the road. And some of those things, maybe that got overlooked, that I want to be the rare occasion. It can be a component failure or something that, that just we wouldn't have known before we sent it.
Sure.
But I think that's what we do different.
How long does that
than most
process
people do.
take? I mean, I know we know, but for our audience here, if you bought an RV off of our lot, a unit that's in stock, how long does that process take?
We like to have 5 full working days minimum. And not all of that is necessarily hands-on techs working on it. A lot of it is, we're waiting on components to be shipped out from the manufacturers. Obviously, under our current environment, a lot of those time frames have been stretched out greatly, and so we kind of have to be patient with some things. We definitely make sure that when the coach rolls down the road, that it is in a safe and functional and livable condition. There may be little things where we couldn't acquire a part, like a ceiling light lens or a drawer handle or a guide or something like that, and that's just mostly because of the length of time it takes to acquire parts out of Indiana. And a lot of those factories are either shut down or they're operating at a diminished capacity, so it's nothing that we have control over.
Sure. Now, you guys have been doing a good job on WEOs too, of having organization on if there's something that, the customer wants to take delivery next week, but we're 3 weeks out on a small part, a light lens or something simple. You're good at also getting them back on and calling them and making sure that they come back in for service and able to get that hammered out before they head south or whatever. Or if it's something that they have the capability of just doing with the screwdriver, sending it directly to them. So, I've on the sales side, we've had really good experience with that.
A big part of that is just having solid communication and processes and procedures, and then just making sure that they're followed and they get followed through on. And ultimately, it's a better experience for the customer. And that's what we're shooting for. I'm not worried about the convenience for myself or the people back in service or necessarily the sales staff. It's about the customer and, how they feel about it and just following through and doing what you promised you're going to do. And that's one thing I can say about, our sales department is they don't make unrealistic promises. They don't tell people things that aren't true. I can almost tell, and you'll have instances where somebody comes back into the service department after the fact and they'll make a statement, and it's so out of character for our sales staff to have said something like that. I know that it's not true, or that it wasn't heard correctly. We get to know each other so well.
They promise you repaint it the color we like.
Yeah. Or in finance office, we sell a lot of aftermarket products like Tyron, that'll help you during a blowout to control your vehicle. We sell a lot of service contracts, and service contracts are very specific. And I've heard our finance department's pitch on service contracts enough where I could almost probably recite it from memory. And so I know when somebody comes in and says, "Hey, your finance guy said this is a bumper to bumper warranty." Like, I don't think he said that.
None of them
I've never heard of a warranty that's bumper to bumper, and there must be he must be mistaken. Let's get him in here and we'll get it hashed out. But but I mean, for the most part, it's all very positive experience, and I really enjoy the people I work with and enjoy our clientele, and there's some real characters out there. It's nice to develop some lasting friendships with a lot of them. So.
Sure. Thank you for listening to our podcast. We will get right back to it after this quick announcement. Do you like shredding some gnar up at the bump?
Slaying some pow with your buddies?
Living life on the edge, toe edge and heel edge, that is.
Digging in the backcountry? Happy Campers Rentals is doing buy 2 nights, get your 3rd free. Take your buddies up for the weekend for a long 3-day weekend and go hit the mountain up at Mount Bachelor.
A question about collectible efficiency. I know it's one of the variables that you report at the leadership meeting every Friday to the other managers. Collectible efficiency is essentially the bang for the buck for the customer. Where was that years ago? How has that developed? Where are you at now with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So collectible efficiency is basically a measure of how many hours a technician clocks, what time they punch in, what time they punch out versus what they bill during the day. And so the more efficient a shop can be, it's twofold. One, the customer is receiving a better value because the technician, the shop isn't trying to pay the technician off of, a one hit, one shot. We are looking for repeat business. We want to give the customer the best deal we can. We try to keep our technicians, their education in the industry to a degree where they can be highly effective. So for us, it's great because obviously the company does well. The customer receives the benefit of having a highly trained and efficient technician working on their coach, not wasting a bunch of time doing needless diagnosis or replacing parts. One of our biggest pet peeves is people that are real technicians is that you want a technician that's going to troubleshoot, identify the issue, diagnose, and then repair. And that always is not just throwing a part at a coach or throwing a multitude of parts at a coach until you can get it working correctly. So it saves you a ton of time. It saves you a ton of money to have good people with the proper education working on the coach. So yeah, Collectible Efficiency. When I took over the shop, our collectible efficiency was about 46%, which is, that's...
And explain what that means.
That means that for every 10 hours that an employee was clocked in on the company clock, that they billed 4.6. Which is pretty atrocious.
So they're only working on a coach for 4.6 out of those 10 hours.
Out of that 10 hours, 4.6 got billed. Now, that's not to say that they didn't work on it, but, we would take a little bit of creative license with the numbers if based on the experience of the technician, were they really working on something that was to their the benefit of the project and the person, and adjust the hours accordingly. So in other words, if that gentleman spent a lot of time spinning his wheels doing diagnosis, the customer didn't get paid for that, or didn't get charged for that time. Now we run in the summertime during our busy season in the high 80s, 85%, which for our industry is outstanding. Most shops that are not just a straight flat rate shop in an environment where seasonality is not an issue, they're not going to approach numbers like that. So we're very proud of that. And
is 90 achievable in the industry?
We'll hit 90 for a week or a couple weeks. Or there are guys out there. I mean, there's some guys in our shop, especially the body shop, that exceed 90% on a regular basis. But I'm talking about an average of all the technicians in the shop, averaging 85% for a month. And it's great. It feels good. And it's a good value for everybody.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome.
You ready for the next segment?
Oh yes, the RV industry.
This is the industry as a whole. So we've talked a little bit about Beaver coach sales specifically, just to broaden your scope here. And I think you're one of the best guys out there who's got his pulse on what's going on. I know you don't just put your head down and look at Beaver coach sales and that's it. So as an industry as a whole, Sean, what is one common myth about the RV industry that you run into all the time?
One of the biggest problems that I hear coming back from customers is the quality of the service centers and the quality of the repairs that are executed on their coaches where they travel throughout the country. I probably take anywhere between 25 and 40 phone calls a day. And most of those are tech support type phone calls. And kind of one of my first things is hey, have you had a technician check this out? Have you had somebody look at it that knows what they're doing and go through it with a meter? And almost immediately the response in almost every case is, yeah, the nearest service center is 300 miles away, or I'm in the middle of, such and such Tennessee. And I had a mobile guy that, that is RV plumbing and boat repair, and so I'm sure that, there's great people out there. They're hard to find. And in areas where you would think that there would be more representation, like a lot of areas in California where RVers frequent, Arizona, New Mexico, you would think there would be a lot of really high quality sales and service facilities in those areas. And it doesn't seems to be really lacking. It's like there's a big opportunity out there for good technicians, and a good technician can make really good money. It's just, I think in our the current state of things in our country, maybe that people aren't pushed towards more technical jobs, or they think that maybe that that it doesn't require college, but a guy can come out and make $50,000-$70,000 a year with not much education. If you've got some good skills and you got a good head on your shoulders and you can learn and adapt, it's doable. So I don't know if that's really a myth as much as it's a reality that there really aren't there aren't a lot of good service centers out there, and it is hard to find.
It makes the really good ones stand out.
Yeah.
I'm surprised how many times I've been up in your office and you're on the phone call with someone and a customer that didn't even buy from us, who's somewhere on the East Coast, goes, yeah, well, I'm here at so-and-so service center and they have no idea what they're doing here. Here's my technician. And hands the phone to the tech. and now here's a customer that didn't buy from us. They're not getting parts or anything from us. They're at a service center somewhere else where they're trying to perform, and they don't know what they're doing. And I'm blown away by how patient you are on that phone. Now, this is nowhere near a suggestion. Just call up Sean, and he'll just walk you through how to do repairs and stuff. Yeah. But I think you handle those situations really well. But you're right. I'm surprised how many of those you do get.
Yeah. It's pretty common. I mean, I used to see it as kind of a burden, I guess, when I first started doing it. We had a great guy here that used to field a lot of those phone calls. Ken Carpenter, anybody that's been around our business or in the industry for a while probably knows of or has talked to Ken. And upon his passing, I kind of took on that responsibility as well as managing the shop. And so at first I saw it as a real burden because the guy fielded, a mountain of phone calls every day and helped a ton of people. And people would call just to talk to him because he's a great guy. But now I see it as more of an opportunity. I'm trying to diagnose that issue over the phone, maybe identify the failed component, get them over to our parts department if they're close enough, try to get them booked into the service department. And sometimes to the degree of frustration that people are expressing, I'm like, well, maybe you just want to make this coach our problem and trade it in, and here's what we got, and kick them over to sales. So instead of treating it like a burden, I treat it like an opportunity that makes it fun for me, and it makes it worthwhile to our company to continue to do that. Because if we couldn't produce something for our effort, then it really wouldn't be worth it. But yeah, I think it's really fun too. It keeps my skills sharp. And my mind works in a way where I'm there when the person's describing, the issue to me. I'm looking at the battery box. I know what it looks like. I know where, the coach power solenoid is. I know where all the circuit protection is. And, I'm walking them through it. If they have a meter, if you guys don't have a meter, buy a meter. That should be the number one thing that you buy when you buy a motorhome, is just buy a multimeter. Even if you don't know how to use it, I can put you on FaceTime and walk you through it, and pretty quick we can probably figure out what the problem is and if you're capable of repairing it or not.
I've sat in your office.
A piece of advice.
That is the first thing you said.
Sometimes it's just like eating lunch, and he lifts the phone up like in between bites while someone's going. He goes, "Okay, now on the left.
To the left.
It's going to be a red wire. Go ahead and cut that." And no. So what bay? It's a third bay on the left.
Yeah.
Just it's crazy how much.
12 inches by 14 inches. Look right behind it. It's nuts.
But almost almost 30 years. I mean, in this industry, you pick up some stuff. So
I have a pile of papers that you've drawn diagrams on for me to help explain something in between customers. But no, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that we have you here to be able to do that for our customers, and that you're willing and enjoy doing it, because I can totally see how that could feel like a burden. I've seen the stack of papers on your desk, and every day. It's not like it's just a day. It's like every single day, and you call back every single piece of paper in there before you leave for the day. And that's saying a lot. Not a lot of people would be willing to do that and also run a shop at the same time, an entire shop.
Like I said, I like the challenge. I think that's what keeps me coming back day after day. And there was 10 years where I ran the shop as a shop foreman, and then when I got off of work, I had a mobile RV repair business that I did on my own, and most of that was emergency and after hours. So like people that would lose heat in the winter, or they lose water in the summer, whatever the case may be. And so I learned a lot about in the mobile industry, which at some point I hope that we can create a mobile service here at our shop. But it does take a very special individual, like
problem solving.
If you can't do it in 2 trips, you're not making any money. So the first trip has to be either have the right part in hand and be able to diagnose it over the phone, or go one run, diagnose the issue, come back with the right part, install it, problem solved. So it takes a very a special person that just can walk yourself through the steps and make sure that you're doing it correctly. And when we get that person, we will definitely have a mobile service, at least for the local area. That's one of my goals in the next handful of years, is to get something solid going, because I think there's an enormous need for it. There are a lot of people in the Central Oregon area that are either using their motorhomes, for recreation, or a lot of people are actually just camping out in them, living the life. So yeah, it's a big opportunity.
So this has obviously been a totally different year for everybody, us included. We've been able to stay open through it, which has been awesome. What do you see the effect of COVID having on the industry as a whole? We've seen some interesting things with getting parts and that sort of thing, but what is your view on how COVID has affected us as the RV industry?
Well, it seems like about every 5 to 7 years, there is some big shakeup in our industry, whether it be, economics or, turmoil somewhere in the world, fuel costs. In this case, it happens to be a pandemic, so that's a new one on me. But yeah, I think the biggest way that it's affected us is the supply and demand. We have not been able to acquire the volume of new units that we would have likely been able to sell to customers, just because the manufacturers were either, their workforces were decimated with illness and they were subject to extended shutdowns, or the manufacturers of the individual components that it takes to build the coaches were subject to those kind of outside influences, and then so the manufacturer couldn't assemble the coaches. I heard at one point that one of our major manufacturers that I won't name had units stacked up against the fence that were minus furniture, of all things. So yeah, it's just there are a lot of very complex issues at play, from just the supply of the individual components to manufacturers and their ability to deliver coaches to the dealers, and then also for repair components for warranty issues and things of that nature. And just being able to reach out and contact the manufacturers has been difficult. So yeah. There's a lot. It's been a very interesting last 11 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to say the least.
One thing you guys saw when it first happened was when they were closing the Canadian border. We have a ton of Canadian customers.
Yeah.
I remember when all of a sudden it was like they got 10 days and these guys they'd had scheduled appointments with you guys in the shop, and it was like you guys became the Canadian Service Department for a minute there.
Yeah. We had a lot of people that were trying to make it across the border, and some of them were having some pretty heavy mechanical issues that were gonna, preclude them from making it across the border by the deadline.
Yeah.
And so as the rush was on, and then we had some locally some large forest fires that displaced a lot of people. So we took in a lot of work, just try to make people's trailers and motorhomes livable so that they had a place to live, because their homes had burned down or they'd been evacuated. So we've had a lot of really interesting dynamics at play this year for definitely sales and service, and hopefully next year it'll stabilize a little bit. I mean, we always appreciate an increase in business, but
not that way.
Yeah, we're kind of drinking out of the fire hose for about 6 months there.
Yeah, seriously.
So why do you think that the RV industry is on such a rise right now? I mean, everyone who we've talked to, our store included, the sales have been definitely through the roof this year, and kind of unprecedented. So what do you think are some of the reasons why?
Oh, geez. I think
talked about the negative ones with the fire
people.
and the COVID,
I think people
and all,
being pent up has created a lot of just demand to be able to have some freedom of movement and travel. And I think Americans by nature don't like to be told what to do. And so to have that, you kind of have that independence, that whatever you want to call it, that independent nature, pioneer spirit,
freedom.
Whatever, freedom, whatever you want to call it, that they don't like people telling them what to do. They want to, if I want to travel to California, I'm going to California. If I want to go see my family, I'm going to go see my family. And it also gives them an opportunity, especially in the current environment, to isolate themselves. They can travel out to an RV park or a campsite, or even to like a friend or family's home, and they have their own space. And so, yeah, it gives people an opportunity to kind of separate themselves, but still be out there doing what they want to do. And so I think that's a big part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even before that, you look at 2017, 18, 19 numbers, and the chart just goes like this.
Yeah, we've had a
steadily increasing.
Pretty steady increase in volume, yeah, for sure.
Very cool. Well, Eric, our next round here is lightning round. So we're going to ask you 4 questions here. We're going to rattle them off. Give us your best answers. Question number 1. Where do you see the future of the RV industry going, Sean? We've heard a little bit about the past. What does the future look like?
Well, geez. I mean, if I was to guess, I would say that the RV industry has a pretty big target on its back as far as emissions are concerned. I know that was a big reason why Caterpillar kind of got out of being the power plant manufacturer for RVs for quite a long time, and then they were kind of out and onto the off-road stuff and heavy equipment. So I think the next big leap is probably going to be in just power development, like chassis development, drive mechanisms. Like I could see, and we've talked about this for a long time. I think as the technology improves, energy storage improves, that we'll be able to see things that are more like a larger blown up version of a hybrid automobile, where maybe you retain the generator, maybe it increases in size, because now, generators are topping out like 15K, right. 12K. Go to a large generator, a large storage bank, then to an electric drive system as opposed to a diesel drive system. And because all the components are essentially already here. We're going to a lot more lithium stuff. I know like Tesla's coming out with some huge advancements in energy storage and stuff like that. So I think it's going to kind of take a melding. The RV industry is usually, I say, a decade and a half behind the automotive industry.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I think that is probably going to close the gap a little bit. But I think that's something that would be, great for the industry and the environment, kind of that evolution. The technology is definitely there. They're already using it like a locomotive. Essentially, the diesel consuming portion is generating electricity. It's just a giant generator, and then that's powering electric motors that powers the drive wheels that pulls that enormous train. So we know that we can do it. It's just packing all of that technology into a smaller space, making it lighter weight, and then incorporating it, into the motorhome chassis.
And affordable.
So, and make it affordable, yeah. And not tear the environment up doing it, because I know
right.
that some of the elements that are involved in creating some of those power cells they're not common, and so it takes a lot of energy to get them out of the ground and turn them into batteries. So. Yeah, I think technology is going to advance to the point where that'll be the next huge evolution.
Yeah. Now, when you started in the RV industry, there wasn't even slides in RVs.
No.
So to go off of that future of RVs, what's a cool feature on RV that you would like to see in the future, if you can imagine one up or drum one up yourself?
Cool feature.
Besides the nerdy, electricity and storage and energy stuff. Really think outside the box.
Outside the box. Jeez. I've seen some really cool stuff where they had some amphibious Class A RVs. There were some Class A RVs that were four-wheel drive, had a much higher stance, larger tires, so you could take them into some more less accessible places. I mean, stuff like that is really cool to me, the engineering behind it, and then kind of the freedom it gives you. But I saw, some videos of a couple of these big, nice looking Class A RVs that they just drive them into the water like an amphibious, beach landing vehicle, and they would just take off across the lake. So yeah, stuff like that would be cool. I can't ever see that being a high enough demand to probably make it mainstream, but just things like that are neat to me, because we've been in the industry for so long that we kind of see the same things coming up over and over and over again, and just being kind of I don't know. Yeah, I just like to see the different stuff. We get used to the same stuff over and over and over. They all start to look the same.
Right. As opposed to like having a whole sky deck on the top.
No, that would be cool to have. We've done things like that for people. We built some platforms on roofs for guys that went to NASCAR races. We really, and that's kind of thing. Like I was saying, the challenge is what I appreciate, and having the day, every day is different. We've done some handicap accessible modifications to people's couches, like roll-in showers, big cutouts and doors and lifts and things. And so, yeah, stuff like that's really fun. I like taking on those projects, and kind of makes you use your head a little bit.
Cool.
Totally. So, got one question. 2 parts, one question. If you can go anywhere right now, anywhere you want, what RV would you take and where would you go?
For me, it'd probably be something that had a little bit of off-road capability. So maybe something like one of the little 4-wheel drive Mercedes chassis. And then me and one of the other technicians years ago went up to Alaska and did a little fishing trip. One of our other gentlemen from the shop was getting married up there, and so we kind of made it as an excuse to go on a 9-day Alaskan fishing expedition. So I'd probably do something like that, take it up the Lakin and go do some fishing up through Canada and Alaska, and
That'd be fun. Jeez.
Be a good time.
Can we come?
Yeah.
That sounds like a blast.
You've been talking about it for years.
That's awesome.
Good. And then what are 3 things that RV manufacturers should really focus on a product before it leaves the manufacturer and shows up in your service department?
The 3 things they should focus on. I would say one of the biggest issues that we have is kind of interior fit and finish. You get to a certain level of price point where the customer is much more discerning. Just making sure that nail holes are filled and that trims are straight and properly applied, and gaps at countertops and gaps at cabinets to walls, and just stuff like that. The finish of the cabinets, making sure that those things are consistent throughout the coach, that it's not dry shot, or if they're stained, that the stain is even, that the cabinet doors are properly adjusted so that they're all nice and level, using quality components, quality hinges, where we can adjust hinges, and then somebody will operate the door 2 or 3 times, and all of a sudden it's out of adjustment again. So just like quality components, and then things that using components that make sense. Like if you're going to have a drawer pull on a drawer, and this may sound petty, but if it's round, it could be orientated in one of 360 degrees, and you would never know the difference. If it's square, and one is orientated at 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and the next one's, just to 3:30 to, then it becomes really apparent. So I'd say and these are things that I hear, coming back from customers as well. It's just, the fit and finish stuff is really important to them. Just having an eye for quality, making sure that somebody walks the coach before it goes out to the dealer. Things like that I think would really help. Just a final, like a white glove, somebody to go through it and just make sure that it's up to standards.
It's cool there. I mean, you could do all the big stuff so great. It's just the only thing you could really find to get picky on is some of that little tiny fit and finish, because by and large you got 99.9% of the unit's ready to go from a safety, livability, functionality standpoint.
Yeah, and the electronics packages.
Yeah.
Making sure that those things that everything works. I know.
Yeah.
We have all the remotes.
All the remotes.
Wires are
The multiplex systems are pretty prevalent in the industry now, which is great. It's a great way to save, money on running, giant looms of wire from the front of the coach to the rear of the coach, and it allows you to incorporate a lot of the components, into the multiplex. But I think that, a lot of issues arise. They're either software issues or things of that nature, where compatibility between components, that's something that we really don't have a lot of control over. And and that's why I shudder sometimes to think about how other dealers deal with the situation, because I know how complex they are, and I know how much time that our AV guys and our electronic guys spend on it, and how smart they are, and how long they've been in the industry. And it's like, I have a lot of pity for a dealership that doesn't have those kind of people, because I don't know how they would ever possibly go about solving those issues. So. Yeah, just making sure that the stuff in there is solid and it's proven. I think the like we spoke about a little bit earlier, the difference between the automotive and the RV industry is somewhere in the world right now, there's a 2024 BMW out on the track, and they're going to run that thing for 10,000 hours before it ever goes into production. And so it's always kind of been, I don't know how apt this description is, but each coach is unique. They're not built by robots. They're built by people. They don't go down a traditional type automotive assembly line. The degree of consistency from one vehicle to the next can vary. And so inherently then the owner is a lot like a test pilot. Like every one of those guys is out there on the road, and it's a little bit of a prototype. And so I don't know if it's from a research and development standard in the manufacturing side, how far out they're starting. Are we really looking at 2024? What kind of things are we going to incorporate? Is this the multiplex system that we're going to use? What components? What satellite dish? What Wi-Fi booster? How is it going to interface with the hydronic heating system? So on and so forth. So yeah, I think like the automotive industry, when they went from basically, when I started as in college, they had an interrogator which you could hook up to multiple vehicles. Every manufacturer had their own interface. So in order to go from vehicle to vehicle to vehicle, you had a cartridge you would have to plug into this thing, and then you had to change the harness so that you could interface. And then they came out with OBD1 and OBD2 and so on and so forth. I think a big thing that the industry could do is if they could try to somehow standardize some of those systems, some of those components, and the way they interface with each other, then that would save, the customer and the service facilities, a whole lot of time and effort down the road. Yeah. And probably do, great things for the industry as well.
Yeah, totally.
That's really good.
Awesome. Good deal. Man, that's a lot to unpack. You got 40 some years of knowledge up there that we can dig into. I think we need to have you back on for another one. I was thinking about it as we were talking. I think it'd be a lot of fun to talk about specifically, like drill into something you mentioned with like lithium and the batteries, because that's something you and I have talked about for hours on end. You add it all up, and I think we should do that.
I agree.
Talk about that specifically. That's a big question in the industry. But thanks so much, man, for taking the time out of your busy day to tell us about yourself and the shop, and we certainly appreciate you making the time for us. So
yeah, and if you wanted to pick Sean's brain about a particular subject, you can call in here at the store. Just know he's a very busy guy, so have your questions developed. And if you want us to do another podcast with Sean on a specific topic, like you said, whether it's solar panels or specific functions in the RV, write that in the comments below, and we'll take that into consideration. But yeah, thanks for being on the show, Sean.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, man.
And we'll see you literally tomorrow.
All right.
Or later today.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Do you drive the Cousin Eddie special?
Do you drive a Rolls Can Hardly?
Rolls down hills?
Can hardly make it up them?
The old jalopy getting you down?
Well, we have the promotional for you.
10% off discount at Beaver Coach Sales parts and service right now going on. Book your appointment, come on in, and get that old sled fixed right up.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you guys so much for listening. That was an awesome podcast. I learned a bunch, and I think I think we all did.
Yeah, Sean is an incredible guy, isn't he?
Oh man, he
Holy
knows so much.
smokes! So it's a treat. Anytime I sit with him, I realize, wow, I don't know anything.
I am a fool.
I thought that I knew something about that. I don't.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, that was a ton of fun. And he's one of our best friends, and we love talking with him and hanging with him. So that was awesome. I enjoyed it. I think we should really have him back on for a couple more topics. I mean, he can talk to us about anything. So
seriously, if you have any questions or any specific areas of a RV you want us to do a deep dive into, please add it below in the show comments, and we will strongly consider, making a whole podcast out of it.
Definitely.
We just have to, grab Sean's attention for I can't believe we got him for an hour.
I know. I mean, he's hard enough to get for any amount of time, so it's awesome that he took the time out to do it. So definitely. Well, thanks again so much for listening. I'm Eric Shaver. This is Ryan Kelly, and this is the Wheel Estate Show.